wanted to, you know. And fortunately, unfortunately, another part, something that was interesting. And it wasn't medicine, and it wasn't law, it wasn't essentially, I looked at an order, and I realised that communication was essential. It's also important to know words written down and words delivered are different. They may sound good written down, or written format, but they may not necessarily be
Reverion, stay away, stay ahead, stay on, news flows, AI scanning, markets green, blockchains running.
This is Reverion Studios. My name is Ryan Benfenteno, otherwise known as Ryan B, Yuri B, the Web3 Wanderer, Blockchain Explorer, and AI enthusiast. And today we have someone very, very different from the typical guest we interview. So the person I'm talking to right now is actually a speak. So for those people that don't know why it's relevant in crypto, I would like to share my story myself. Back then I was very, very anonymous, and then I had the opportunity to go public and really talk to people in person during events and also during interviews. And before that, I consulted a speak coach myself. So that really gave me confidence in everything. And now I'm talking to a professional. Hopefully before that, I consulted a sales coach myself. Inside that really gave me confidence in everything. And now I'm talking to a professional. His thoughts on the market, his thoughts on crypto, his thoughts on crypto. Before that, I consulted a sales coach myself. Inside that really gave me confidence in everything. And now I'm talking to a professional. His thoughts on the market, his thoughts on How do you think shifting from that drama fast to
money-wise that I can really think or remember is
what were some professional opportunities?
the privilege and
starting, and how did they snowball?
to some extent the freedom that it brings to your life when you have money.
How did that change when you started working, when you started earning your own money, started investing, and so on and so forth?
So I don't really invest, but I started working really pretty young because I think I had my first job. I was 14. I was actually working in a ski rental shop, and so I was spending my weekend and holidays renting skis and snow boots and snowboards to people. Um, so I always enjoyed working, and I think from then on I had a little break when I was in when I was 17, 18. But then from 18 on, I kind of always worked also on the side of the studies. As a way again to, of course, when I was studying, my parents would pay for my rent, for the school supply and things like this, but that was it. If I wanted anything others, and I did at the time, I wanted to be able to travel, and so I worked a lot. But I think for me, actually the thing that really changed it's not so much my perspective about money, but just for me it was never really about making money in itself. I always wanted to work because I was raised with and maybe it's a generational thing of you accomplish yourself through work. So and work also allows you to secure your financial stability and things like this. But there was a lot of realizing yourself through work. And I think around COVID and during COVID, I think my perspective around work, money, and everything shifted a lot. And I saw both work and money then as a little bit more as a way to achieve freedom in our current society. Again, I wish it was not. But I think I put a bit less emphasis after that into realizing myself through work. I always approach work like when I work, I always want to do the best I can. But that's more for myself rather than to prove myself to the world or to my parents through working, So it's more, it's about being proud of myself for me, like doing a good job, knowing that whatever I've done, I've given my best. And then both of them together also hopefully to achieve financial freedom before I'm retired, basically, I would say. And yeah, I saw more money as a tool rather than an objective in itself.
That's pretty awesome. Our next question is more about maybe leading towards the tech Alephian side. So before I go into this Alephium, I know you mentioned snowboarding. Maybe you could give a snapshot of the progressive part towards your role right now as CEO of Alephium. Before Alephium, what were maybe some of the milestones that you were most proud of that might have nothing related to crypto?
They were embarking on a series of competitions. I think the MasterCard Lighthouse slush all the awards going at that particular competition. At the same time, I guess my name got passed around in certain circles, and so different people from different organizations in the crypto world or in the blockchain world would approach me. It did approach me. It was either as well as finding out how to behave in a podcast, decent voice on a podcast, how to manage panel discussions and mediate appropriately so that you're in control, but you're still allowing people to have that free-flowing sense of sharing stories so that the audience can get engaged. And before I knew it, I should say, there I was going to Dubai, which was this year, and then I found myself in Singapore later this year, which is where you and I connected.
Yeah, it was too bad we weren't able to meet up in person. I think this conversation in person would have been more interesting, more organic, but like even right now over this virtual type of interview, I can already sense a lot of the quality in terms of how you communicate and how I'm receiving it as well. Going from a, a background of not talking too much to people, I think, because a lot of people in blockchain or Web3 space, we just usually deal with the data and we usually just chat each other. But I think lately there's been this huge shift towards the importance or the demand for in-person conversations. So people have been going to more events, talking to more people. Talking to people has become part of the actual job. Gone were the days where we would just chat over each other, and now there's really an in-person conversation. What were some things you might have noticed about this industry? Maybe some patterns you've seen executives or people within this industry have that either are good or bad when it comes to communication.
I think you've touched on quite a lot of them. So, founders in the industry are traditionally those people who spend a lot of their time behind a computer screen. The majority of the time, if someone said, 26 hours a day, 8 days a week, 400 days a year, and they spend so much time behind the screen, they come up with fantastic. I'm so lucky to be in this space. I've seen some fantastic concepts been brought to life. And whilst their ideas are good, even the execution's good, and they could come up with a prototype, for example. When it comes to wanting, venture capitalist investment, how can they tell a story that's compelling enough that allows people to to buy in? How comfortable are they asking strangers for cash? And that's where the breakdown is, and that's where I still see the breakdown. It's one thing having an idea, but if you can't sell the idea in a compelling manner, if you can't explain the concepts of that idea to the people that matter, and slowly but surely, you'll see this, you need to become more granular, you need to explain it at ground level, you need to overcome that trench that is widening between tech and, consumership, right? And they need to be able to deliver their message in a way that has impact. Best way to do that is to tell stories. You can list data until the cows come home, but the truth is data deteriorates and stories stick.
So going back to my personal experience, I think because this topic is also quite personal for me because I experienced firsthand how it was like being behind the screen to having to talk in front of hundreds of people as well. I had a speech coach back then, as I mentioned, and one thing he really told me to do is don't be afraid to be a little bit more vulnerable when you're on stage, and don't be afraid to share your stories, as you said. I think there's a lot of struggle when it comes to knowing how much vulnerability you're supposed to share, and as you said, telling a story from a tech perspective, sometimes we focus only on the details or only on the important parts, and we don't really know that much about the flow of a story. Could you give us maybe some tips on what you think a good story would be like for a typical founder?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know about the typical founder, but generally what you want to do with stories, so, is you want to talk about the adventure that you're having as you're hitting different points, right? So, like I said, the majority of people that I dealt with, or do deal with, have spent their time have spent so long behind a computer screen with code and data and so on and so forth. They understand their end point, and there may be lots of different things going on around them, but they don't talk about those because we generally tend to ignore those things as we're on our mission to our target. I'll give you an example, just out of interest, tea or coffee? What do you drink?
I'm a terrible person when it comes to coffee. I like my coffee black and I just like it cold. And I just like it because it's very, very fast and it's very, very efficient.
Cool, my man. Each to their own. Great. So, how would you make a cup of coffee in 5 steps?
The first would be, of course, to get a cup, open your coffee, the pack, put it in, some hot water, mix it, and then some cold water to the brim. And then if you have some ice, then put some ice and then you're done. You take the first sip.
Excellent. And that is what I would expect. Now, talk to me about what's happening whilst you're making that coffee.
Well, first, I have to choose what cup I want to drink from. I actually have two. So I have blue and green. I think blue is for my heavy days and green is for my light days. So there's kind of a ritual there. If I know it's going to be a bit heavy, I pick up my blue cup. After that, I get a pack or two. It depends on how heavy the day is going to be as well.
Okay.
So if it's going to be heavy, then I double dose my coffee.
Okay.
If it's just going to be a light day, then I start with maybe just one pack,
Okay.
and then
So
for the
you've just given
hot
me,
water, I
sorry to interject, you've just given me some excellent information. Whether your coffee is cold and black and so on and so forth, I'm slowly going to forget. But the fact that you have heavy days and light days, and according to the kind of day you're having, you're going to choose a particular cup, right? So now if I were to ask you, how do you make a cup of coffee in 5 steps? Your introduction would be, well, kind of coffee I make begins at the decision of what kind of cup I'm going to have. And the kind of cup I'm going to have will depend on whether it's going to be a heavy day or a light day. It's going to be green or it's going to be blue. And that is what I mean about wrapping data into a story. It is the nuances that we sometimes ignore, the things that we need to put to one side, or the things we need to get over, through, or around, that form part of the story. I'm British, I'm also Indian, so that makes me a big tea drinker. And if someone were to ask me that, how do I make a cup of tea in the morning, I start with, no one talks to me in the morning until I've made my first cup of tea. No one. Not my wife, not my 2 daughters, not even the dog. And that's how I start my story. The data will follow, but it is these things that everyone can relate to. Everyone can relate to having a heavy day or a light day. Those of us who drink cold coffee or need caffeine in the morning can relate to what we go through in order to get that first shot of caffeine to wake us up. And everyone has a ritual when it comes to doing things on a routine daily basis, right? And it's about having the right language to describe these things. So you're basically setting a scene and then populating that scene with the data. Now you can talk about, I take 5 sugars in my coffee, 2 creams, 3 dashes of hazelnut syrup, and before I know it, I've got a bit of coffee with my hazelnut syrup and sugar. But essentially, that's what you're doing. You're attempting to put in human emotion and sentiments into what would otherwise be very stark, emotionless data.
The next question I have is a little bit more about something that I find myself doing a lot, which is when I give presentations, sometimes I get overwhelmed with the data. There's a lot of times where you have to say so much in so little time that you don't know what to prioritize. And I usually find that those presentations don't do well compared to presentations where it's just one singular point that you can have a lot of focus on. How would you approach maybe a situation like that where there's overwhelming data and you have to wrap in a story, or you have to have a story, a good narrative around it, but there's so many things you feel like are so important that people should learn or hear as well?
Well, what you want to do is you want to do a couple of things. You want to not make it so complex, number one, and you want to make it easy for the audience to understand. Because if you do that, they don't have to spend so much time, effort, and energy understanding what you're saying. And the likelihood of you actually being remembered and them understanding things goes up. So let's make it easier for you. Stick to one story with one data point. And if you've got to describe another data point, try and put 2 data points into that. It's difficult if you're overwhelmed by data, you're not going to fit it all into one story. So set it up as different stories. And it's quite easy to do because in your day-to-day life, from the moment you get up to the moment you go to sleep, you participate in a number of different stories. You have your story at work, you have your story at home. If you have a partner, you have a story with them. If you have a pet or a dog you need to take for a walk, can you guess? I've got to take the dog for a walk. You have a story with them. If you have children, you have a story with them. You spoke to a friend, there's a story there. You had an interaction from the person you bought a cup of coffee from, she didn't want to do it at home, there's a story there. You can create smaller stories. And sometimes you have to make the decision. What data is really that important? Gun to your head, what could you lose? Because unless you're delivering a life-changing lecture, if you like, it's a presentation, and a presentation is a snapshot. This is the information we've got, and you can also put on any slide If you'd like more, or to find out more, press here, contact me. This can be sent. This is just a snapshot. Manage the audience's expectations. For example, now we have been overwhelmed with the amount of data that we've got on this latest thing, so I'm just going to give you the snapshot. Right? I'm going to give you the main points. If you'd like any more, contact me, send me an email, and I'll send that information over to you. Manage the audience. If you manage the audience's expectations, in turn you manage your own expectations, and it's about lowering the load.
Before we continue to talk more about speech and good practices and communication, I also want to ask about your journey to Web3 and blockchain. Aside from your work with executives, with people in the industry, do you have a personal journey, or how did you discover blockchain? And do you also participate? Are there things in the market that you find interesting?
But the short answer is yes. I'm also a great believer. I don't like being one of these people who I need to know what it is that I'm talking about. I also need to know what it is that my clients are talking about, excuse me. And for a large proportion of the time that I've been in this space, it was a case of nothing made sense. And I didn't have the time to sit down with 3 different dictionaries and figure out what was being spoken about, the number of abbreviations and acronyms and TradeFi and DeFi, Wi-Fi, WhoFly, McFly. It was nuts, and it was just more trouble than it was worth. My recent trip to Singapore, I met with a different group of people, and Web3 was becoming more and more prominent. And I decided to venture into this, and I asked for some assistance. And actually, I saw a post on LinkedIn from someone who's a big name within the field. And they said the best way to learn is to actually take part in it. So participate in it. And I thought, that makes sense. Now, during Web 2, I can say this now because I kind of know what I'm talking about. During the .com boom, I went out as a linguist and I bought a number of .coms, .co.uk's. I bought a number of domain names and then resold them and did pretty well. Things like chipsandbeans.co.uk. I bought Phantom Snapper, and I bought one called That's My Missus. I'll tell you what that's about. I just enjoyed the linguistic play, or the socio-linguistic play on domain names that attributed themselves to certain parts of society. So, what I have done,
It's quite
and they were
hard
absolutely
to
right, it's a
be
steep learning curve.
a content creator
Went over
whose
to free name,
topics are
and
general
I
because
bought
they
some
don't know where
Web3
he can
real
fit,
estate.
well, at least in terms of branding.
And that's where it is
So
that I
get to
am
know
at the moment.
yourself, get
So
to
I
know
bought
your
some real
niche,
estate. I've
and
obviously
lots
bought
of
my
research.
own
Reverion,
dot
stay
speech
away,
coach, dot
stay
public speaking
ahead,
coach, so on and so
stay
forth. So I'm going to be doing some reselling. I've got some bigger ideas
AI scanning,
with
markets
some other
breathe,
TLDs that I
blockchains
bought. That's
running
kind of where it
down.
is that I'm at the moment. And also understanding the whole idea of
This is Reverion
tokenization,
Studios. My name is
the idea
Urian
of adding
Buenconsejo,
value
or
to
otherwise known as
something
Yuri B, your
which would
Web3
not
wanderer, blockchain
otherwise be
explorer, and of course
valued,
AI
and
enthusiast.
then
And
being
today we
able
have
to
somebody who has
convert
been on the
that
ground
value
of one of the
into a
latest
tradable
events in the
asset.
Philippines,
Oh
which
my
is the
God,
YGG
I'm
Play
using
Summit.
language that I
We have
don't think I would
Denica.
use, and I actually understand what
So
I'm talking about.
before I introduce her, of
So
course, a
that's
quick
where it is
disclaimer
that I'm
for
at
our
the moment.
audience. This is
What
not
you're going
financial
through is very,
advice.
very
We're not
relatable for
trying
a
to
lot of
shill
people
anything here.
in the
We're just
field. When
having
we
an
started
educational
out, we had to
conversation,
lose
especially
money,
how the
and
event
then
went, and maybe thoughts on the market, thoughts on education, thoughts on AI, and even more. So, Denica, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, of course. Thank
it's
you as
all
well,
about money,
Uri,
and then you
for
try to do
having me
something, and
here.
then
I'm
you
very
lose money,
excited.
and then why did I
Yeah,
lose? Oh, I
definitely.
didn't
So
know so many
we
things,
like
and
to
then
start our
you revenge
interviews
learn
with
that, and
something a
then
little bit more
that's when you
nostalgic.
finally like
So this is
actually
something we
participate.
usually
So that's a
ask
common story
our
we have in our
guests when
industry,
we
and I do
start.
agree with you that there's so many abbreviations
What did your parents
that
teach you
we
about
in the
money as a
field
kid,
don't
and how
even
did
know,
that
and we're
transition as you
constantly
grew
trying to
older?
learn as
Were
well,
there things that
just
you
because of
had
how
to
wide it
unlearn,
is.
or things that you learned and stayed with you as you grew in your career?
Yeah, so this is like a story that I always tell my friends. So when I was
I
younger,
ask
I had
all my
this
clients
mindset to save up
one
for
simple
things that I wanted to
all
get,
right.
and that allowed me to have or
Fascinating
be
how
more,
LinkedIn is
I'd
changing.
say, financially
I'm
responsible
speaking
in
to
acquiring things that I wanted along the way as I grew up. But yeah, when I was younger, I didn't have that much of a big allowance, so I really had to put in hard work. And what my parents and I had an agreement when I was younger is when I make it to the top 10 in my class or in my batch, they would give me that the thing that I wanted. So long story short, I didn't save up much, and they ended up just getting me what I wanted because I always made it to the top 10 for some reason because that was my motivation. So I had that mindset growing up, like I really need to put in hard work for me to get the things that I wanted. So that's a really great question. It really made me circle back to how I grew up.
Yeah, of course. So that's a really interesting story as well. I think the next logical step would, of course, be to tie that story to who you are right now, what you're doing, how are you working. So could you tell us the journey between then, when you were always top 10 and like really studying and then getting those rewards from your parents, to finally maybe discovering crypto, blockchain, Web3, and now what you're doing at YTG?
Of course. And yeah, just a disclaimer, I didn't mean to brag that I'm always part of the top 10. I just wanted to mention that because I had motivation in doing so. So that's actually what I carry with me. During my college days, that was during the pandemic, and we had a lot of time to really like work on ourselves. So during that period, I took the initiative to take on voluntary internship because I wanted to earn a little bit just for me to, have my own budget for the things that I wanted to get. And during that time in my life, I discovered this fintech company. And fun fact, that's the few people that I work with now. So it's really a small world, and you can see how the grit that we have, the things that we wanted to achieve, as long as you put hard work behind it, you'll get there. So that's actually one of the reasons why I'm here now, because that fintech company was, I was working with the husband of my boss during that time, and now that after that, basically, I work with his wife, and his wife happens to be the co-lead of Metaversity. And prior to that, I was working with her for an AI trading company, that's the 10x2. It got acquired by YGG Pilipinas, and that's the reason why I'm here now, and I'm always grateful about that journey of mine.
So thanks for that disclaimer and of course tying this story together. And I think right now, could you talk a little bit more about what you do, your position, what are maybe some tasks that fill up your day, and of course the company that you're working with right now, or the project or the blockchain that you're working with right now?
Yes, so hello guys, for those who are watching. By the way, my name is Danica. Some people might know me as Denny. I do marketing for YGG Pilipinas. So in particular, I'm the marketing manager for Metaversity. So during the early stages of my stay in YGG Pilipinas, I was mainly handling Metaversity. So for those who don't know what Metaversity is, it is the educational arm of YGG Pilipinas. And we offer crash courses, in short form educational videos wherein we get to learn marketing, leadership and management, and productivity. So that was my main task for YGG Pilipinas. But along the way, I also got to touch base with different campaigns of YGG Pilipinas. Let's say, for instance, Spectre Agency, Vibes, Ragnarok Leaders. So I got to handle those campaigns, and mainly I do social media marketing. Sometimes I even do email marketing and posting on the side as well. So yeah, it is a really fun job for me.
Before talking more about YGG and Metaversity, can you share with us maybe what a marketing campaign looks like? Because it's something that gets thrown around a lot, but I don't think a lot of people understand the intricacies that get involved when you actually launch a marketing campaign. So if you could you maybe give us an idea of what it looks like from start to finish?
Yeah, so I think like a strong rooted marketing campaign would be to actually get to know, aside from what the client wants, is what your consumer would want. So the strength behind that is we have a really strong community base in YGG Pilipinas. So we took their insights and ensure that those are taken into consideration when it comes to creating marketing campaign. So let's say for instance, they would want to see more tutorials about how this game works. Let's say for instance, they would want to see shows or feature YGG esports guys for them to actually appreciate what the game would be about. So those kinds of insights, we have it incorporated within our plans. So our plans basically, we have different sets of channels. So those channels would be social media, perhaps even email or community marketing. So we have like different segments on how and where we're going to communicate those messages with the overall goal of course, promoting the said game. So those like are the highlights of it. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing about that. And that makes a lot of sense because, like, at the end of the day, a successful marketing campaign has to cater to what the audience wants or has to cater to what the consumer wants.